Hello friends, this is Daniel from Moralis and we are going to do something very cool today. We are going to generate our own fantasy character as an NFT to play in any RPG type of application. Let's do it. So we are going to get a character right now. I will call it Daniel the Brave. And the actual character that I will get might have nothing to do with the name because it's random. Is asking me right now to sign the transaction to mint this as an NFT. I actually got a very good character to be the Brave, but we have very bad attack. We have better defense, but not great. And our weapon of choice is a mace. It's not a great character for this game, but that's what we got. This is done through a random number generator that is natively in JavaScript, so it's a little bit cheaper than using a on-chain random generator. And let's go back to give it a glimpse in OpenSea, though it takes a while to appear in OpenSea. We got it here, Daniel the Brave. And here it is. So it's pretty neat. And let's review how to generate this dapp. We are going to do it in stages. We are going to first upload the collection of images that we are going to use as a base to generate the NFTs. And then we are going to go to the actual dapp that puts everything together and mixes the images with the traits that we are going to give them in the game. Let's go to it. The first step for this dapp is being able to upload our collection, right? And for that, I have another page here that you have to hide. Better if you put it in an API that requires authentication, so you are the only guy that's able to reach it. But the general idea is this. I'm authenticated with Moralis here. So we have this page here that I'm going to show you right away how to build, and we're going to choose files. You then go to the folder where you have your collection and you just select your entire collection and then you click upload collection. Let's do it right now. And here we are in the images that we want to upload. So I will just go here and upload all the images that I want. I will click open. And for this one, I need to have the console open because we are going to get some output here. And the idea is that from these 5 files that we have here, we are going to get them uploaded in IPFS. So the warrior goes in, the thief goes in, the elf goes in, and those are just names of the images. Hobbit, and we're missing the wizard. Here it is. And after everything is in IPFS, we just have this JSON output here that is generated by our program. We are going to check that one later. And then the idea is that we are going to copy paste the output that we got in a file that we have here that we call IPFS collection, which is just this thing over here. Is basically what appears in your console after you uploaded the images, and it's what we're going to show there. So that's basically the way that we are going to refer later to these images when we are actually generating random characters based in those specific archetypes that we just uploaded here the specific images for. Now I will show you how to build this part. For this one, what we have here is a very simple HTML page where we just have a couple of inputs. One input is to get the files and the other one is the button upload. For this, we need also to import our bootstrap if we want to make it look pretty, which might not be into our requirements, but sometimes we want it. And then we need, of course, our Web3, Moralis, and our a specific script to upload this to IPFS, which is going to trigger here. So we have the upload collection button here, and this is just initializing our Moralis server. If you are totally new and if you don't know how to initialize a Moralis server, then where the hell have you been? This is the only way to generate dapps in an easy way, not spending days in something that can take you minutes. Now we go to our Moralis dashboard here. If you are not a member, you can sign up. It's totally for free. If you are a member, you actually just need to create it. So I will create here. You go to create server. I would put it in testnet, and I will get this fantasy RPG server as I have it right here. And that's the only thing that you need. Then you go to copy your application ID and your server URL, and you are set. Now we go back to our Visual Studio Code. So that's what we have here. After we have those two things, we do Moralis authenticate, because we just want to be able to upload this to IPFS. So we don't need any very fancy authentication where we allow the user to put their email or all of those things. That's for another type of video. Now that we are here, we have this async function upload, where we are just taking the input that we got from our HTML file, which is called files, and we are creating this JavaScript object empty at this moment, and then we just run through each of our files, and we do it with this loop over here. We are console logging the name of the file, which is what you saw in the run that we did before, and then we are going to put the specific file as the data that we are going to upload to IPFS thanks to Moralis. That's the part that Moralis makes it very easy. And then we just save it and get the URL here in this specific object. We just basically are mapping each number as signaled by this index with the URL. And what you are getting back, we are console logging, and we just get it as we got it here. Then we just copy paste this part and we put it in this JSON file, and that's it. We have the collection already in. With very long collections, this process might take a while, but it's going to work anyway. And I could have just teach you how to generate the JSON file and generate it automatically, but I think with copy paste is enough for this sample. So this is the way that we do it. We could have done this with 5 images, with 10 images, 15, or whatever number of images that we wanted to have. So that's all for putting the collection up. Now let's generate our NFTs, right? We are going to show you the code for doing that right away. The HTML for our dapp is actually quite simple. We have something very easy to build. We have our libraries imported, which is our bootstrap to make it look pretty. And we have our Web3 and Moralis imported, as well as our logic file where we are going to build our logic. In the case of the inputs, we don't have a lot. We just have a text input to place the name of the character, and we have the get character button that will trigger this get character function in our logic.js. Also, we have this your character space here, which is a div where we are going to display our character, but we are going to do that programmatically. So at the moment of the HTML, we don't have to care about that. Remember that all of this is in the GitHub repository in the description of the video, so you don't have to build it yourself. For the logic of the dapp, we are going to divide it in 3 steps. We are going to start by initializing Web3, then we are going to talk about the generation of the character itself, and then we're going to mint the character as an NFT. I have commented everything regarding the minting process right now. We are going to cover only first the initializing Web3 and generating the character, so it's easy to digest. As you notice, we have the 2 logic files separate. We have one logic.js that we use for our index.html, which is our main dapp, and we have this upload collection.js, which we just described, which was only for our config HTML that we used to upload our collection. We also have this JSON file here that we copied from the console after we run our config HTML. In this part, we are going to have the initialization of our Moralis server as we covered before. We are going to have the contract that we use for minting NFTs, and this is something that I'm including the batteries for you to practice. Now we are going to start with the first step, which is initializing Web3. We are going to have this routine of initialize Web3 first, where we are just authenticating in our Moralis server and activating our controls. That is because in this index HTML, we have these controls disabled as default. We are going to activate them only when the user initializes Moralis and authenticates. So we do that, and then we are going to initialize a Web3 instance with this command here, we know Ethereum. This is very simple, and it's just to have a contract that we can interact with. Now, second step, and this is the one that we are going to spend most of our time. We are going to have in our workflow the step of generating the character traits and the character itself by a random number. This is the way that we're going to get it. We are going to have a function that we are going to call getRandomValues, which is the function that we have over here. And for this function, we are assigning this array to a new join 32 array. So that means that this array is going to have 32 bits of 4 elements. So we're going to have 4 numbers basically generated for this function. We are going to have 4 numbers because we are going to use those 4 numbers to generate the 4 traits of the character. The main one is going to be what type of character is going to be, what weapon the character will have, the attack and the defense. So that's the reason we are generating 4 numbers here in this array. And then we are just going to populate that array with this function, window crypto, and this crypto is not as in cryptocurrency, is as in cryptography, because this function is actually a cryptographically secure random value, and this comes as part of the JavaScript libraries that come by default, so it's very handy. And we are just populating the array here with this function. So we return the array, and that array will have 4 random values. Now we go back to our getCharacter function, and we are going to generate the 4 things that we need, right? But to begin with, we are going to generate a character index. And this is because these numbers that we are generating here in this function are actually 32 bits arrays. So they are rather big numbers, but the characters that we have are only 5. The weapons that we have also are only 5. So we don't need such a huge number. So we are going to simplify things by getting the mod of the number that we got from a random number generator of 5. That means that it's going to get us numbers between 0 and 4. And then we are going to add 1 because we want to have a number between 1 and 5 actually to generate our characters, and the same goes for our weapons. Now that we have this part over here, let's say that the number was 15. So that is not what is going to happen because the numbers are much bigger than that, but let's say that was 15, right? So what we are going to get in that case in mod 5 is going to be 0 because 15 is exactly divisible by 5. In that case, we're adding 1, so this number for the character index is going to be 1. Then for weapons, let's say that we got 16, right? So this mod 5 would have been 1, and then we're adding 1, so that is going to be the number that we're going to get from this code here is going to be 2. So in that hypothetical case that we were discussing, we're going to have a character index of 1 and a weapon index of 2. Now we are going to call these functions of map character weapon. And we're going to go to these functions over here. So for the map character, we have the following thing. We are going to fetch the images that we have in our IPFS collection over here. So we know what is the URL that belongs to the character according to its index. And then we're going to assign a role. Then we are going to return a dictionary that will have the role of the character plus the URL where the image of that specific role is. So we are just mapping, and what we are returning is, in this case, since our character index was 1 in our hypothetical case, we are going to get the warrior here. So that's what we would have get in that hypothetical case. Now, in the other function that it's actually quite similar, what we are doing is getting the weapons map, and we are going to return the weapons index. In this case, we have sword, dagger, mace, staff, and spear. In the hypothetical case that we were discussing, where our config array second number was 16, we are getting a weapon index of 2, so our weapon is going to be a dagger. We are going to get the following. We are getting the character name from our HTML. That's getting the value that the user placed in that field. And then we are going to generate the metadata for our character or our NFT. We have the name, which is the character name that came from the user input. Then we have the role, and the role came from our random number mapping here. The image also came from the same function because the role and the image are linked. The role of an elf will have the image of an elf, and the role of a warrior will have the image of a warrior. The weapon, it's what we are mapping here with the weapon index. And then we are getting also the attack and defense. And for this, we are picking the index number 2, which is the third number in our array, and number 3, which is the fourth number in our array. We are going to apply the mod function to those as well, but we want to have attack and defense to be multiples of 100, right? So we want to have it between 1 and 100. The same logic that we apply here, but we are using the 100 in the mod function and adding 1 to it. So that's the way that we get our metadata. Then we are using that metadata to upload that file into Moralis as a base 64, and then we save it and we get the URL. Then we use that URL to display the NFT. So for this function, what we are doing is first fetching the metadata from the URL that we have in IPFS, thanks to Moralis. Then we are awaiting that there is a response of the JSON content of that request that we did with this fetch, and that will load this JSON object in this variable NFT metadata. Then we are just populating HTML with the information in that metadata. So we are going to get the name, and we are displaying it in an h4 tag. Then we are displaying the image tag in an image container. Then we are displaying the role also in an h tag, but we are going to do it in an h5. The same goes for the weapon. And then for attack and defense, we are going to display them as progress bars. After we have created all of these HTML elements, we are just adding them to this display NFT HTML that we have in our index, which is over here. So we are just creating HTML to place here, and that's it. With that logic, we have our own character. So we can run it right now, and that's it. Let's create our character. I will create a character right now that's gonna be called Gimli. Get it? And we have it here. It's not being minted as NFT, but we have it as our IPFS object here, and it's properly being displayed with the code we just discussed. Next, we are going to go to actually implement the minting of this IPFS object with our contract. Now, we are going to start with the fun part, which is minting. And for this, we are going to make use of this contract that we have here, and we are just going to create an extra function, which is this mint token. For this, we are going to rely heavily on the URL that we already generated from Moralis, which is the IPFS URL. And that's the part that Moralis is saving us a lot of time to be able to do it very easy and fast. So we are going to get this function mint token that takes the URL and then is encoding a function call to the contract that takes a string URL here, and that is called mint token. We are going to pass then some constant, which is transaction parameters, which contains the NFT contract address, which is over here and that you can change. Then we are going to pass the Ethereum selected address. This is coming from MetaMask. So this is going to point MetaMask to get the user to sign the transaction when the process gets to this part. And then we're going to encode the data and define it as the encoded function constant that we created over here. After that, we are going to send the Ethereum request. Then when we return this value, we are going to return the transaction hash. In the function of get character, this is the last part that we are calling. We are going to display the metadata URL, which we have from the Moralis IPFS, and then we are awaiting a call to this mint token function that we just created over here. And that's everything that we need to do. After that, the token will be minted and will appear eventually in OpenSea. Now we are going to generate another character. We are going to reload the page, and this is asking us to authenticate. We authenticate, and then let's generate another character. We're going to call it Daniel the Old, which I hope is a wizard, but it might not be. So let's generate it, and we got a hobbit. A hobbit could be an old character. So let's work with this one. We are going to mint it. So we have the choice of weapon is a sword, and it has very little attack but a lot of defense, which is classic hobbit. They are very resourceful but not very powerful, and they can be old. So I like this one for this stage. We mint it, and we are going to wait for it to appear in OpenSea. And here it is, Daniel the Old. In the collection of characters that I have two hobbits, the old and the trickster. I have a warrior, I have the wise, and I have the elf. I've never been able to get a wizard, but it's totally random, so you know. So guys, I hope that you have enjoyed this video. I hope that you can implement something like this in the future. Remember that you can work hard or work Moralis, and I will recommend that you work Moralis. And what better way of working Moralis than subscribing to our channel, smashing that like, and get all the knowledge and go with the platform and play and code as much as you can.